You push a man long enough, he walks. But you push a nation, you better be ready for the silence that follows. Because that's silence. That's not surrender. That's a message. India just walked away from the table. Not storming out, not shouting. Just stood up and walked. Trade ties with the United States, severed. Not because it wanted to, but because it had to. After years of being treated like a second-class partner, after the tariffs, the accusations, the public humiliation, India made a choice. And it wasn't out of anger, it was out of dignity. Now the world's looking east, toward Moscow, toward Beijing. And people are asking, why would India turn to them? But maybe the real question is, why did the West make her feel like she had no other choice? This isn't just about exports, it's about identity, about respect. And when that respect is gone, all that's left is power. So let's talk about how it happened and what it means for a world that's shifting under our feet fast. Let me know if you want the full monologue or a closing in that same voice. Let's get one thing straight. India didn't just wake up one morning and decide to cut ties. This wasn't emotional. It wasn't impulsive. It was deliberate. It was the result of something deeper than politics or economics. It was the slow erosion of respect, chipped away year after year in the boardrooms, in the back channels, in every trade negotiation where India's voice was heard but not listened to. That's the kind of silence that builds pressure. And when that pressure finally releases, it doesn't explode, it exits. You see, people mistake quiet for weakness. They confuse patience with passivity. But anyone who's studied power, real power, knows that the most dangerous man in the room is never the one shouting. It's the one sitting still, watching, waiting, remembering. And that's what India has been doing. Watching the West make promises they didn't keep. Waiting while tariffs were slapped like punishment instead of policy. Remembering every time it was told to sit at the global table, but eat from the kids' menu. This wasn't a break, it was a reckoning. Now think about what that means. When a relationship truly breaks, it's not because one side got loud, it's because the foundation gave out. That's what happened here. The foundation, mutual trust, respect, understanding. That foundation had been cracked for years. Every time the US bypassed India on critical decisions, every time the narrative became about what India should do rather than what it could do, every time its strategic autonomy was treated like a liability instead of a right, there's a point where a partner stops being a partner and becomes a pressure point. And that's exactly what America turned India into. Not because it had to, but because it thought it could. That's where the arrogance crept in. The assumption that India needed the US more than the US needed India. That's not partnership, that's hierarchy. And in the 21st century, hierarchy doesn't hold. So when India finally ended trade talks, when it turned away, it didn't slam the door, it closed it, quietly, firmly. Because sometimes silence says more than outrage ever could. And don't think for a second this was about bitterness. This was about balance. India didn't walk away in anger. It walked away in clarity. It realized that if the table isn't built for equals, then maybe it's time to build a new table. Somewhere else. With others who understand what respect looks like. Because they've had it denied to them too. What we're watching isn't the collapse of a deal. It's the unveiling of a decision. The realization that no matter how much history two nations share, the future has to be earned. And when one side stops earning it, the other side moves on. Because the truth is, you don't leave the room when you're angry. You leave when you know you're not coming back. What's truly remarkable, and maybe to some unsettling, is how India's turning eastward isn't a flight, but a calculated embrace. Russia and China, often seen as rivals or even adversaries, have become the new focal points for India's trade and strategic partnerships. This shift isn't born from whimsy. It's a reflection of hard realities shaped by history, psychology, and the deep philosophical need for recognition. Consider this: relationships, whether personal or political, are built on two foundational pillars: trust and respect. When those pillars erode in one relationship, the mind instinctively seeks them elsewhere. And that's what India did. After years of feeling sidelined by America's often transactional approach, after enduring tariffs and political posturing that felt less like partnership and more like punishment, India sought partners who met it with a different tone. One that acknowledged its sovereignty, its ambitions, and its dignity. Russia is no stranger to India's strategic calculus. Their relationship spans decades, marked by shared history, defense cooperation, and a mutual understanding born out of geopolitical necessity. It's not just business, it's a bond forged in respect for each other's agency. China, on the other hand, is a more complex equation. But India's engagement with China is also pragmatic. A recognition that the global balance of power is shifting, and that economic and diplomatic relations cannot be ignored or wished away. There's a profound psychological layer here too. When one door closes, the human or national instinct is to find another door that opens. But this isn't just about options, it's about voice. India's move eastward is a declaration that it will no longer be defined by others. It will choose its own partners. It will speak its own language of power and diplomacy. This is a nation reclaiming its narrative, refusing to be boxed into scripts written elsewhere. Philosophically, it speaks to a larger truth about agency and identity. Nations, like individuals, must align with those who respect their essence, not just their utility. If one partner's demands feel like chains, it's only natural to seek freedom elsewhere. And freedom, in the geopolitical sense, means the freedom to choose alliances based on mutual growth rather than coercion. So, what does this pivot mean on the world stage? It signals a reordering, not a rupture. It's a reminder that global power isn't static. It flows, shifts, and reconfigures as nations assert their dignity. America's loss here isn't just economic, it's moral. When you push a partner too far, when you mistake patience for weakness, you don't just lose a market, you lose an ally's heart. Ultimately, India's turn east is a call to recognize that respect is the currency of sustainable relations. Without it, even the strongest economic ties unravel. And when a nation decides to realign not out of convenience but conviction, it's a signal to the world respect must be earned, cherished, and preserved. Because in the dance of nations, the one who leads is not always the loudest voice, but the one who listens and acts with genuine regard for the other's dignity. One of the most striking dynamics in this whole shift is the profound misunderstanding at the heart of America's approach to India. It's almost as if America mistook India's calm and dignity for submission. But patience is not weakness, silence is not consent, and restraint is not passivity. What many failed to see is that India's strategic posture was, and remains, a carefully crafted balance, a testament to centuries of history, philosophy, and the relentless pursuit of self-determination. India has long walked a tightrope in international relations, balancing its desire for economic growth and technological advancement with a deep commitment to sovereignty and independence. Unlike many nations that align themselves clearly with one power bloc or another, India has consistently sought to keep its options open. This is not indecisiveness, but wisdom, a refusal to be cornered or coerced. So when pressure came from the United States, insisting that India abandon its long-standing defense ties with Russia, that it bow to economic demands, that it accept a narrative that diminished its agency. It wasn't simply a policy disagreement. It was a challenge to India's very identity. This is where psychology meets geopolitics. When a nation is asked to deny its history, to sever bonds that are integral to its security and self-understanding, it is not just a political issue, it's a psychological violation. It's akin to asking a person to reject their own past or betray their family. Such demands do not foster loyalty, they breed resentment and resistance. America's mistake was to confuse India's cooperative diplomacy for compliance. India did not refuse out of obstinance or defiance. It refused because it had to. The refusal was a line in the sand, a statement of self-respect and self-preservation. It was India saying, well, we'll engage with the world, but on our terms. We will pursue partnerships, but not at the cost of our autonomy. This stance has deep philosophical roots. India's concept of sovereignty isn't just about borders or military strength. It's about the freedom to chart one's own path, to be a subject in the international order rather than an object. To be recognized not merely as a consumer of power, but as a co-creator of it. From this perspective, the American demand wasn't a negotiation, it was an ultimatum. and ultimatums are rarely conducive to genuine alliance. They force a choice between loyalty and survival, between partnership and pride. India chose survival of its principles, its vision, and its future. The lesson here is profound. Alliances based on pressure and dominance may yield short-term gains, but they erode the trust and respect that sustain long-term partnerships. True diplomacy requires listening as much as speaking, understanding as much as demanding. When we look at India's response, we see not defiance for its own sake, but a measured and meaningful assertion of agency. It challenges us to reconsider how we view partnership, not as a one-way street of influence, but as a shared journey of respect and reciprocity. And so we must ask ourselves, in a world where power is often mistaken for authority and force for respect, how many alliances have been lost not to enemies, but to misunderstanding? Because when patience is mistaken for weakness and dignity for compliance, the real casualty is trust. And once trust is broken, no deal, no amount of trade can easily repair it. In every relationship, personal or political, loyalty has traditionally been the glue that holds things together. But in today's world, where the landscape shifts like sand beneath our feet, loyalty alone is no longer enough. The currency of international relations has evolved into leverage, the ability to shape outcomes, to influence decisions, and to protect one's interests in an increasingly complex and multipolar world. India's pivot away from the United States toward Russia and China reflects this stark reality. It is not a betrayal born out of disloyalty, but a strategic recalibration grounded in the pursuit of leverage. Loyalty implies a steadfastness, a commitment that often expects sacrifices, sometimes without immediate returns. But leverage is about agency, the power to negotiate from a position of strength rather than weakness. And India, like any sovereign nation, is compelled to choose partnerships where its voice carries weight, where its interests are respected, and where its future can be shaped on its own terms. This shift exposes a profound philosophical tension in the nature of alliances. Are they unconditional bonds, sealed by history and sentiment? Or are they dynamic agreements, contingent on mutual benefit and respect? India's decision forces us to confront this question head-on. When an alliance ceases to serve a nation's strategic goals, when it becomes a source of constraint rather than empowerment, what is the ethical response? To cling to loyalty regardless of cost, or to seek new paths that better reflect current realities? From a psychological perspective, this recalibration is a natural and necessary act of self-preservation. Nations, like individuals, must evaluate their relationships continuously. To remain tethered to an alliance that no longer aligns with one's core interests is to risk stagnation or worse, subjugation. India's move is a declaration of autonomy, a refusal to be locked into a paradigm where past loyalties blind one to emerging opportunities and dangers. At the same time, this realignment is not about burning bridges indiscriminately. It is about expanding options, building a diversified network of partnerships that reflect a multipolar world. India's engagement with Russia and China is complex and nuanced, reflecting both cooperation and competition. It is a sophisticated dance, one that recognizes that power is rarely absolute and that survival often depends on balancing competing influences rather than aligning exclusively with one. This reality challenges older notions of geopolitics rooted in bipolar or unipolar frameworks. It demands a new kind of diplomacy, one that prizes flexibility, strategic foresight, and above all, respect for sovereignty. The countries that understand this will be the ones who thrive. Those who cling rigidly to outdated models will find themselves isolated, their influence diminished. For the United States, India's pivot is a wake-up call. It signals that power without respect, that pressure without partnership, is a losing proposition. If America wants to remain a key player in this relationship, it must move beyond transactional dealings and embrace a vision of true partnership. One based on listening, mutual growth, and genuine regard. In the end, leverage is not just about strength, it is about choice. India's choice to seek new alliances is a testament to its sovereignty and a reminder to all nations the world no longer revolves around any single power. The future belongs to those who recognize that respect, agency, and adaptability are the real currencies of influence. And so, as we witness this shift, the question we must ask ourselves is simple yet profound. Are we ready to redefine loyalty in an age of leverage? To build partnerships not on obligation, but on opportunity and mutual respect? Because the answer to that question will shape the world for generations to come.